Right, over the few weeks and the few weeks that are coming, you will be aware that we are giving out tickets for some of the wonderful gigs that are happening down at the Marquee in Cork. And one of the big gigs that's happening this year is the Dropkick Murphys. But more importantly, it's the band that are their special guests on that particular evening. We are, of course, talking about Stiff Little Fingers, otherwise known as SLF. And delighted to say, I'm joined on the phone now by Jake Burns. Jake, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Jake, now, I have to say, Stiff Little Fingers go back to my youth and obviously to an awful lot of people's youth as well. You're still touring nowadays. How hard is it to keep that energy going? Like, you know, you were formed in the 70s and you're still going nowadays. Is it something about playing live that just kind of encapsulates you every time?
I think so. I mean, you know, we've always worked better as a live band, I think, than we ever have in the studio. And you know, I've always loved the immediacy of playing in front of an audience. You know, it's like you get an instant reaction. You don't have to wait for, you know, a record to come out to hear whether people like it or not. You know, you get the instant feedback when you're on the stage. And, you know, that energy is something we've always fed off. You know, realistically, apart from a short break in sort of the mid-80s, we haven't really stopped at all. So, you know, it's like I said, it's something, I think you're absolutely right, it is something that we feed off. It's something that, you know, we've always enjoyed doing. So, and again, if I'm being completely honest, we're probably unemployable at anything else at this stage in our lives, you know.
Can I ask you, because obviously the Dropkick Murphys rate you as a major influence on them when they were growing up. But like for ye in the 70s, who were ye listening to? What was your influence? Like basically, what made you pick up a guitar and say, you know, I want to be something, I want to do something with this?
Well, actually, I mean, it's the truth. I'm not just sort of, you know, sort of blowing smoke here because I'm talking to folk in Cork, but it's actually Rory Gallagher was the main reason I picked up a guitar. When I was like 12 or 13, BBC Northern Ireland recorded Taste's farewell show at the Ulster Hall, and they played it right after they played it in two halves. They played the first half after the football results one Saturday afternoon. And I just sat to watch the football results and was about to leave the front room when they started, and I literally froze in my tracks, turned around and sat down, you know, eyes as wide as saucers, and just looked at Rory and went, I want to be that guy. So that was actually the reason I picked up a guitar in the first place. And you know, as time went on, I became more interested in the actual songwriting side of things rather than just, you know, showing off on a guitar or whatever. And so by the time punk rock came around, I was, you know, an obvious sign up, really, an obvious recruit.
Yeah, because obviously Rory himself was steeped in the blues and stuff. So, like, you know, was there a conscious decision, or was it just something that you said, you know, I like that sound, as opposed to sticking with the blues?
No, I just liked the sound. I mean, and you know, like I said, he was a huge influence. I mean, it's actually interesting that, you know, I don't think you can hear his playing in what we do, and yet, you know, many years later, I found myself in a hotel bar with Vic Reeves, the English comedian, and he basically went round the band and basically said, you know, oh, it's obvious where you're influenced by. And he came to me and he said, well, you just sound like Rory Gallagher, and I almost fell off my bar stool. You know, it's like huge compliment. And again, you know, we were very lucky. As it turned out, just by pure happenstance, we ended up signed to the same record label as Rory, and I actually became quite friendly with him, even to the point where he actually came and played on one of our records. And obviously, you can imagine that was just a huge thrill from my point of view, you know.
And like the thing about it is, going back right through all your albums, but like you've got such iconic songs like Barbed Wire Love and Alternative Ulster, you know, amongst many others. Like obviously, each year you're kind of, as you mentioned, like, you know, you're always writing and you're always, you know, creating new stuff. How hard is it, you know, when you're playing at a gig and you're playing in front of, let's say, even people my age, and the first song, like, obviously we want to hear Alternative Ulster, we want to hear Barbed Wire Love, we want to hear White Night, all those songs. How hard is it to kind of strike that balance between the two, let's say, of new material and the old classics?
I think, you know, for any band that's been doing it as long as we have, that's something you've got to come to terms with pretty quickly. I mean, if you've been lucky enough to have a lengthy career in this business, then, you know, that's actually a nice problem to have, you know. And, you know, we've always been lucky enough that the audience has stuck with us. They've always sort of given the new material a chance. To the point that, excuse me, to the point that some of the newer songs have become, you know, again, we look at a set list and say, well, we can't leave that one out because they'll lynch us. So, you know, and even the newer songs have become, you know, they've entered that sort of, you know, that roll call as well. I always look at it in terms of, I always draw like a football manager comparison. You know, it's like you're sitting on the manager's bench, and if the gig's not going particularly well, you look down your list of substitutes and you think, well, Alternative Ulster's coming up in a couple of songs. We'll send him on. If he doesn't get us a goal, we're in big trouble. You know, so it tends to be the way I look at it. And of course, the opposite's true. If the gig's going great, and you see something like Alternative Ulster's coming up in a couple of songs, you think, well, that's really going to take a roof off. Yeah. So, you know, it's like I said, it's a nice problem to have, you know.
And like obviously, talking about those songs back in the early days, and you know, they were full of raw anger, and you know, like you could sense the kind of, you know, your not so much your political views, but you could sense the atmosphere that they. You could sense the political atmosphere that you came out of, let's say. So, you know, obviously the political landscape itself has changed. So, you know, is it hard to kind of keep up that rawness and, you know, that sense of anger, let's say, in your music nowadays?
I don't think so. I mean, you know, I actually left Northern Ireland in 1978. I moved across to England when the band first started to work, if you like. And, you know, I now live in America and have done for about 11, 12 years now. So, you know, still things happening today that, I mean, basically I've only ever written about things that have offended my sense of justice, you know. Obviously the sort of state that the world has been in recently has affected everybody. I mean, you know, my wife lost her job as a consequence of the recession that the entire planet's been going through, and because of that, we actually lost our home. We had to I love this new modern phrase. We had to downsize. It means you're broke and you have to move. You know, so you know, we've never reached the stage where we made like U2 money or whatever, where, you know, you're completely, in a way, divorced from the world. I mean, I'm only imagining it must be like that for those guys. But, you know, so from my point of view, the things that affect, I think, the majority of our audience also affect us. And I think that that's one of the reasons that the band are still, you know, as popular as we have been, simply because, you know, what we're writing about are concerns that we have that are concerns we share with the audience.
And can I ask you, like, obviously other bands like, you know, the Clash and the Pistols and, you know, the Dead Kennedys, all that sort of stuff that came from punk. For yourselves, like, as you mentioned, you have that longevity, but I always like asking people this, and I've interviewed a few people, you know, that have gone back, like the likes of Dave Mustaine, let's say, from Megadeth, and those sort of people who've been around the music scene for the last 30, 40 years. Is there anyone nowadays that you look at and go, God, yeah, you know, I like them? Like, it's always interesting to get a different perspective on what's out there nowadays.
There are a lot of bands. I mean, to be honest, I don't get to hear as many young bands as I probably should. You know, again, sort of my wife is much keener on, you know, oh, let's go see this band, let's go see that band. To me, it's kind of a bit like a busman's holiday because, like, you know, like we were just saying, it is, you know, we do spend the majority of our time on tour. So when I get home, you know, the last thing in the world I want to do is go see another band. So, a lot of the time it tends to be bands that I've caught up with. And I'm like I said, because of, you know, my not going out to see bands when they're kicking off, they tend to be bands that are, you know, that have been established but have somehow passed me by. So, you know, we get, I mean, people like the Dropkicks, for example. You know, I mean, I was aware of them, and actually one of our previous drummers, Jim Riley, had worked with them. But, you know, he'd long left the band by the time we actually got to meet the guys. You know, so it was only when they invited us to go play with them here. I mean, we've done quite a few shows with them over here in America. You know, otherwise I was aware of what they did and, you know, and how they did it, but I wasn't aware of just, first of all, how damn good they were at it, you know, until I actually went to see them, you know. And that's been the same when last summer we did a tour throughout the States with The Offspring and Bad Religion. And again, I'd always, you know, I've been a fan of Bad Religion's records, but I'd never actually got to see them live, you know. And then, of course, we go on the road with them, and I get to see them every night for about a month, you know. So there are still a lot of bands out, and I'm sure there are a lot of young bands that if I saw them, I would fall in love with them. I think the key to it, really, is any band that finds its own voice as soon as humanly possible. I think that's that's vital. You know, everybody starts out learning by copying other people and by learning how to play other people's songs and stuff. But I think the quicker you can find your own voice and stand on basically your own 2 feet, then that's when you give yourself your best shot at having, if you really want a career. I don't think anybody, apart from the X Factor folk, get into the music business thinking they're going to have a career. Most people do it simply for the love of it. But, if you actually are thinking that you want to have a career, I think finding your own voice is vital,
Just very quickly before I go as well, because this is a kind of interesting question based on what you said earlier. Obviously, you mentioned, having Rory Gallagher come in and obviously, being able to play with the man like that. But it's how does it feel now to have gone full circle to whereby you're now the influence, for the likes of the Dropkick Murphys?
I find that very strange. Really. It's very, very flattering. Of course it is, and particularly, like I said, when it's a band that have found their own voice and a band that we admire as well, So to have these guys, basically say that we were an influence on them, and it does go. We did a series of festivals in Australia, not this year, but a couple of years back, where I think Green Day were the headline act, and at one point we were playing our set sort of in the mid-afternoon. And we looked at the side of the stage, and at the side of the stage was, so Green Day's drummer was there, Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses was there, a bunch of other guys from the other bands were all standing at the side of the stage. And I turned to Ali, our bass player, and said, the four of us standing on the stage here have probably, if we add up all our record sales, have probably sold a couple of million records between us. Standing on the side of the stage, there's like 135 million record sales watching us,
Not being nervous at all for the fact that you've a couple of guys from Green Day and Duff McKagan sitting looking at you.
No, not at all.
No. You're take it like a pro. Listen, Jake, before we let you go, what can fans expect from your gig in Cork?
Well, again, what we always try and do is look back through our career as much as possible. So obviously we will be playing the alternative Ulsters of this world, and we'll be playing a couple of things from the new album. To be honest with you, I don't actually know how long a set we're going to get yet, so that defines what we do. But we try and hit as many bases as we possibly can, and hopefully, without wanting to sound like some sort of Christmas variety TV show, hopefully there's something for everybody.
Well, look, you know what? If you play a Little Running Bear, I'll be very happy. And that was always one of my favourite live songs.
I don't think we're going to go that far.
Listen, Jake, thanks so much for taking time out to talk to us. We really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And I'm going to the gig in Cork, so I'm really, really looking forward to seeing you. But listen, thanks very much. An absolute pleasure to talk to you.
You too. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. There you have it. That's Jake Burns from Stiff Little Fingers, one of the iconic bands from my childhood, and now guesting alongside Dropkick Murphys as they play the Marquee in Cork. It's going to be an absolute whale of a gig. Make sure you do get yourself a ticket.